It wasn't just a stage. It was a profound test. Ivanka Trump stepped forward, radiating confidence. But Barack Obama met her challenge with an unshakable grace. What he said next transcended a mere comeback. It became an indelible moment of truth. The Washington conference hall gleamed under the bright lights, the stage polished to a mirror shine. Rows of cameras lined the back wall, poised and ready. Every seat was filled. Politicians, journalists, entrepreneurs, and invited guests all gathered for one highly anticipated event, a rare discussion between two of America's most recognizable names, Barack Obama and Ivanka Trump. It was built as a calm, forward-looking conversation with banners proclaiming the theme, Building the Future, Leadership, and Unity in Modern America. Yet no one in that room could have predicted the drama about to unfold. A strange energy hummed through the hall. Polite smiles mixed with nervous laughter, creating that distinct quiet buzz that precedes something truly significant. It felt heavy with curiosity. Obama and Ivanka had never shared a stage before, a fact that had the entire nation watching. As the host took the microphone, the crowd leaned forward expectantly. Tonight, he announced, we talk about what leadership truly means in an era of division and change. The applause was polite, restrained. People were conserving their energy for the main event. Then the host gestured toward the side of the stage. First to emerge was Ivanka Trump, elegant and poised, glowing under the spotlights. Her smile was practiced, almost flawless. She offered a soft wave to the audience, then sat, crossing her legs with quiet composure. Moments later, Barack Obama appeared. Calm, relaxed, his walk unhurried. The applause grew louder for him, not wild, but deeply respectful. He offered that familiar, understated half-smile, the kind that always seemed to say, I've been here before. They met at center stage, shaking hands as cameras flashed, the handshake lingering just long enough to feel important. For a brief moment, everything seemed peaceful. They exchanged polite smiles and a few hushed words before taking their seats on opposite sides of the stage. The moderator began with light conversations, asking questions about leadership styles, the challenges of public life, and how to inspire people today. Obama spoke of empathy and patience. Ivanka countered with innovation and courage. The crowd nodded along. It all felt professional, respectful, and entirely predictable. But as the conversation deepened, the tone began to subtly shift. Obama, his smooth and thoughtful manner, started talking about truth, how every great nation is built upon it, and how trust is impossible without it. He suggested that America's greatest challenge wasn't just economic or political, but rather a struggle to believe in what is real. The audience applauded softly, but Ivanka's face remained still, her expression unreadable as she listened intently. Then she leaned slightly forward, the microphone catching her every breath. When she spoke, her tone was sharp yet steady. Mr. Obama, she began, how can you talk about truth when there are still questions about where you were even born? The entire hall fell silent. No one had expected it. This wasn't a question about leadership or unity. It was a deeply personal attack, hitting the room like a sudden gust of cold air. Obama froze for half a second, not from fear, but from sheer surprise. His expression didn't change, but the atmosphere around him did. In the audience, some gasped, while others exchanged quick, incredulous glances as if to ask, did she really just say that? That rumor, the one about Obama's birth certificate, was old, thoroughly debunked, and proven false years ago. Yet, Ivanka had just resurrected it right there on live television before the entire nation. The moderator's smile vanished. You could almost hear the stage lights buzzing. Obama remained still, hands folded, his eyes fixed on Ivanka. She looked calm, even a little proud, her expression broadcasting. I'm not afraid to ask what others won't. For a long, agonizing moment, no one spoke. Even the cameras seemed to hold their breath. The silence felt endless. Finally, Obama shifted slightly in his chair, adjusting his mic. He let out a soft chuckle, not of amusement, but of disbelief. In that instant, everyone knew something powerful was about to happen. His voice came out quiet but firm. Ivanka, he began. That story's been around for a long time, and it's been proven wrong for a long time, too. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. Amen. But maybe the real question isn't where I was born. Maybe it's why people keep needing to believe something that isn't true. The crowd stirred. Some clapped softly, others watched in rapt silence, eyes wide. Obama wasn't angry. He was surgical. Every word was measured. He looked around the room, then back at Ivanka. Here to talk about the country's future, not to dig up old lies from the past. Ivanka didn't look away. She simply crossed her arms. Her expression unreadable. But beneath the calm surface, the energy in that room had completely changed. You could feel the quiet storm building. People in the front row leaned forward. Camera operators zoomed in. The tension between the two was no longer merely political. It was intensely personal. Obama's tone remained calm, but his eyes told a different story. He wouldn't let the conversation spiral into chaos. Not yet. He smiled again, and that slow, steady smile that always seemed to convey more than it showed. I understand politics, he said. I understand theater, but leadership isn't about performance. It's about truth, even when the truth is inconvenient. The crowd applauded again, louder this time. But Ivanka didn't flinch. Behind her polished calm, you could sense a growing frustration. Her challenge hadn't landed the way she expected. Instead of rattling Obama, it had handed him the stage. The host, visibly nervous, tried to steer the conversation to the next topic. But the air in that hall had already shifted irreversibly. No one cared about the next question. Everyone wanted to know what would happen next, how Obama would handle this, and whether Ivanka would push back again. And that's when it became clear this wasn't just another polite discussion about leadership. This was transforming into something else entirely. A clash of generations, a clash of confidence, a clash of truth. Two powerful voices, one stage, and millions watching. The calm before the storm was over, and what came next would leave everyone in that room speechless. The air in the conference hall now felt even heavier. You could almost hear hearts beating. Cameras whirred softly. No one dared to move. Ivanka Trump sat tall, her posture perfect, her face a picture of calm control, at least on the surface. Barack Obama, meanwhile, leaned back slightly in his chair. That quiet half-smile still lingering. But there was something sharper behind his eyes now. The moment wasn't just tense, it was fragile. One wrong word and the entire room could ignite. Obama looked directly at Ivanka. He didn't rush. He didn't interrupt. He let the silence do the work for him. And then slowly he spoke. "You know," he said softly, "I've been asked a lot of questions over the years, but I didn't expect that one tonight." A faint, uncomfortable, uncertain laugh rippled through the crowd. Obama continued, his tone calm, almost too calm. "It's interesting. We came here to talk about America's future, but somehow we're back to questioning old stories that have already been answered." Every word hit with quiet force. Ivanka's smile returned, small but confident. She leaned forward, microphone in hand. "Mr. President, I didn't mean to offend," she said. "But leadership requires transparency, doesn't it? The people deserve to know who their leaders really are." A murmur went through the audience. It was a clever, calculated comeback, but Obama wasn't taking the bait. He nodded slightly, eyes still locked on her. "You're absolutely right," he said. "Transparency does matter, which is why I made sure the entire country saw my birth certificate years ago. But even after the facts came out, the lies kept spreading. Do you know why?" He paused. The room was silent. "'Cause sometimes it's easier to believe a lie that fits your story than a truth that challenges it." That line hit hard. The audience reacted instantly with soft gasps, then applause that grew louder by the second. Ivanka didn't clap. Her jaw tightened just slightly. She waited for the noise to fade before replying. "I'm not here to talk about the past," she said. "I'm here to talk about leadership. Maybe the kind of leadership people are tired of seeing." It was a bold statement, and Obama knew it. He leaned forward now, elbows on his knees, his voice low but steady. "Leadership, huh?" He smiled faintly. "Well, I agree. People are tired. They're tired of drama. They're tired of finger-pointing, and they're tired of people who mistake attention for impact." The crowd hummed in approval. Ivanka blinked, surprised. He continued, "When your father questioned my birthplace, I understood what he was doing. It wasn't about truth. It was about headlines, and it worked." For a while, Obama looked away for a second as if remembering something distant. Then he turned back to her, his tone softening just a bit. "But Ivanka, this isn't about your father. It's about you. You asked a personal question, so let me answer it with something personal. I didn't get here because of a rumor. Got here because the truth was strong enough to stand. The audience broke into applause again, longer, louder. Ivanka smiled tightly. But this time, her expression had changed. The confidence was still there, but the ease was gone. And that's when the tension really started to show. The moderator, clearly sensing the rising pressure, tried to step in. Let's bring it back to leadership strategies, he said, chuckling nervously. Perhaps we can, but Ivanka wasn't ready to let go. She leaned into the mic again, her voice firmer now. Mr. Obama, with all due respect, sometimes people just want straight answers. You talk about truth, but there's a difference between truth and politics. The audience went quiet again. Obama looked at her for a long moment. Then he smiled a little wider this time. You're absolutely right, he said. And that's why I'm still here to give straight answers. He paused, then added, the truth doesn't need to shout, Ivanka. It just needs to stay consistent. The audience clapped again, this time with conviction. Some even stood. Ivanka crossed her arms, her lips tightening. For the first time, a flicker of frustration crossed her face. Obama leaned back, relaxed again. He had flipped the energy in the room without ever raising his voice. And that's when he decided to go deeper. Not to attack, but to reveal something. His tone softened, almost reflective. I know what it feels like to be misunderstood. He said, your father questioned me. It wasn't just politics. It was personal. It hurt my family. It made people question something that shouldn't have been up for debate, but I learned something from it. He looked at Ivanka again. Every time someone tried to pull me down with lies, I used the truth to stand taller. That's what leadership is. Not fighting fire with fire, but fighting it with light. The applause this time was thunderous. Some people even whistled. The camera zoomed in on Obama's calm face, his tone still warm, his posture still grounded. Ivanka sat quietly, her hands folded. She nodded once politely, but the moment was clearly his. The moderator smiled awkwardly, then tried again to change topics. That was quite the exchange, but the audience wasn't ready to move on. Just witnessed something rare. Two worlds colliding in real time. On one side, a new generation of bold confidence. On the other, seasoned wisdom wrapped in calm strength. And though the room was filled with noise, claps, whispers, the shuffle of chairs, everyone knew it wasn't over. Obama had made his point, but Ivanka wasn't done yet. Something in her eyes said she was about to push back harder. The tension was still rising, and the storm everyone had sensed at the beginning, it was only just beginning to form. The hall was buzzing now. Whispers rippled through the audience like static electricity. Everyone could feel it, the tension building, rising, ready to snap. Ivanka Trump sat perfectly still, but her smile had hardened. The confidence that had carried her through the first half of the debate was beginning to show cracks. Her eyes darted toward the crowd, then back at Barack Obama, who was sitting calmly as if he'd been waiting for this exact moment all along. Obama hadn't said a word in over 20 seconds. He simply watched, listened, calculated. The moderator shifted nervously in his chair, glancing between them. You could almost hear him thinking, please, someone say something before this explodes. Ivanka, he said, you ask me a question about truth. Let me ask you one. He leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. The crowd hushed instantly. You could hear a pin drop. Who? He asked. Is Barron's mom? It was such a simple question, just 4 words, but it landed like thunder. Ivanka froze. Her eyes widened just a fraction. She blinked once as if she hadn't heard him right. The audience collectively inhaled. Cameras zoomed in. Porter's fingers hovered over keyboards. No one had expected that. Ivanka tried to recover, forcing a tight smile. Excuse me, she said, laughing lightly. That's not relevant. Obama didn't blink. His tone didn't change. Maybe not, but it's a question. You wanted transparency, so let's be consistent. A ripple of nervous laughter moved through the audience. The tension had shifted. For the first time all evening, Ivanka looked unsettled. She leaned closer to her microphone, her voice rising. Just a little, Mr. Obama. That's ridiculous. Everyone knows, he interrupted calmly. Then there's no reason to be upset. Another ripple of nervous laughter. Obama sat back. Relaxed, his hands folded in front of him. We're going to trade questions that challenge identity, he said. We should both be ready to answer them. Ivanka's jaw tightened. She wasn't used to being on defense, especially not on a live stage. With thousands watching, I think this conversation has gone off topic, she said, trying to steady her tone. Obama tilted his head slightly, almost sympathetically. You're right, he said. Maybe it's time to bring it back, he paused. For a long second, his eyes locked on hers. But before we do, let me make one thing clear. He turned toward the audience, speaking now to everyone. When people can question anything about anyone, their birth, their family, their truth, just because they don't like them, that's not leadership. That's weakness dressed up as courage. The words cut through the air like a blade. The audience broke into applause, loud, unrestrained. Some stood, some cheered, others just sat in awe, whispering to one another. Obama raised a hand gently too. Quiet them, Ivanka, he continued. I've dealt with this before. I've seen how rumors spread, how they become weapons. But leadership isn't about throwing rumors back and forth. It's about rising above them. His tone softened slightly, almost like a teacher addressing a student. You said people want straight answers. They do. They also want respect. You can't give them one without the other. Ivanka's face stayed still, but her breathing quickened slightly, just enough for cameras to catch it. The moderator glanced down at his cards, pretending to look for the next topic, but even he couldn't look away. Everyone wanted to know how Ivanka would respond. She opened her mouth, ready to say something. But Obama wasn't done. He leaned forward again, voice lower now, deliberate. You came here to challenge me, he said quietly. That's fine. But if we're going to play that game, let's play it with facts. The crowd erupted once more. Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled furiously. Ivanka tried to smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. She tapped her microphone lightly, stalling for time. With all due respect, Mr. Obama, she said, that was below the belt. Obama shook his head slowly. No, he replied calm and clear. What's below the belt is questioning someone's existence to win an argument. The line landed perfectly. Another wave of applause followed. Louder, longer, almost deafening. Obama let it happen. He didn't speak over it. He just sat back, composed, waiting for the noise to fade. When it finally did, he looked at Ivanka again and spoke softly, almost kindly. Maybe next time before we question someone's story, we should make sure we're ready to have ours questioned. Ivanka looked down for a moment, then back up with a thin smile. But the confidence from earlier was gone. The crowd could see it. The cameras could see it. Cameras had done what few could. Had flipped the script without raising his voice, without anger, without insult. He had turned the challenge into a mirror. The moderator cleared his throat, finally finding his words. All right, he said awkwardly. Let's move on to our next question on economic leadership. But the audience wasn't listening anymore. All eyes were still on Obama and Ivanka. The energy had changed. The entire tone of the event had shifted. As the cameras panned across the stage, Obama looked calm, almost serene. Ivanka, though poised, seemed distant, like her thoughts were spinning faster than her smile could hide. She had tried to challenge him with doubt. But now it was she who had been challenged, not with rumors, but with reason. And deep down, everyone in that room knew this wasn't just a debate. It was a lesson in a quiet, controlled storm. And Obama had just shown the world how to master it. The applause had finally faded, but the tension lingered. The air felt heavy again, thicker, denser, charged with the kind of silence that makes people hold their breath without realizing it. Ivanka Trump sat still, her lips pressed together, her eyes locked on Barack Obama. She had walked onto that stage confident, ready to lead, ready to spar, ready to prove something. But now the balance had shifted. No, he wasn't just answering questions anymore. He was shaping the moment. He looked calm. Calm, some might say, like someone who had seen this all before. He straightened in his chair, the faintest hint of a smile crossing his face. And when he spoke, His tone carried the kind of authority that doesn't shout. It just lands. You know, Obama began. I've always believed that the louder someone talks, the less they're saying. The audience chuckled lightly, but the humor didn't break the tension. If anything, it made everyone lean in closer. Leadership, he continued, isn't about winning arguments. It's about lifting conversations. He paused deliberately, letting that line sink in. Ivanka glanced toward the moderator, perhaps hoping to change the subject, but he stayed quiet. Even he seemed caught up in Obama's rhythm. You came here tonight, Obama said, turning to Ivanka, to talk about the future. And I respect that. But when you brought up something as old and false as that birth certificate story, you reminded me of something. How easy it is to drag truth backward instead of pushing it forward. A few heads in the audience nodded. The energy in the room had changed again. This wasn't confrontation anymore. This was clarity. Obama looked at the crowd now, not at Ivanka. His voice softened almost like a teacher in a classroom. We've all played political games, he admitted. I've done it. The Trumps have done it. We all have. But at some point, you realize the game doesn't build the country. Truth does. That line drew soft applause. Not wild, but respectful. It wasn't entertainment anymore. It was reflection. He continued, his tone steady, confident, but filled with warmth. Politics has turned into a show where everyone's trying to win the scene instead of fix the story. People crave drama, not direction. And the real danger isn't what's said on stage. It's what we stop hearing because of all the noise. The camera zoomed in on him. The crowd was locked in. Even Ivanka, for all her composure, seemed caught between irritation and admiration. Obama then leaned forward slightly, his gaze steady. When your father questioned my birth, he said slowly, I knew exactly what was happening. He was building an image, strong, bold, unfiltered. It worked, but it also changed how people saw truth. It made lies feel normal if they sounded confident. He looked at Ivanka again, and now here we are repeating that same pattern. Ivanka opened her mouth as if to respond, but he gently raised a hand. Not rudely, just enough to signal he wasn't finished. I'm not here to embarrass you, Obama said calmly. I'm here to remind everyone watching, including you, that power means nothing. If it isn't grounded in honesty, the crowd went quiet again. The sound of a single. Obama began. I've always believed that the louder someone talks, the less they're saying. The audience chuckled lightly, but the humor didn't break the tension. If anything, it made everyone lean in closer. Leadership, he continued, isn't about winning arguments. It's about lifting conversations. He paused deliberately, letting that line sink in. Ivanka glanced toward the moderator, perhaps hoping to change the subject, but he stayed quiet. Even he seemed caught up in Obama's rhythm. You came here tonight, Obama said, turning to Ivanka, to talk about the future. And I respect that. But when you brought up something as old and false as that birth certificate story, you reminded me of something. How easy it is to drag truth backward instead of pushing it forward. A few heads in the audience nodded. The energy in the room had changed again. This wasn't confrontation anymore. This was clarity. Obama looked at the crowd now, not at Ivanka. His voice softened almost like a teacher in a classroom. We've all played political games, he admitted. I've done it. The Trumps have done it. We all have. But at some point, you realize the game doesn't build the country. Truth does. That line drew soft applause. Not wild, but respectful. It wasn't entertainment anymore. It was reflection. He continued, his tone steady, confident, but filled with warmth. Politics has turned into a show where everyone's trying to win the scene instead of fix the story. People crave drama, not direction. And the real danger isn't what's said on stage. It's what we stop hearing because of all the noise. The camera zoomed in on him. The crowd was locked in. Even Ivanka, for all her composure, seemed caught between irritation and admiration. Obama then leaned forward slightly, his gaze steady. When your father questioned my birth, he said slowly, I knew exactly what was happening. He was building an image, strong, bold, unfiltered. It worked, but it also changed how people saw truth. It made lies feel normal if they sounded confident. He looked at Ivanka again, and now here we are repeating that same pattern. Ivanka opened her mouth as if to respond, but he gently raised a hand. Not rudely, just enough to signal he wasn't finished. I'm not here to embarrass you, Obama said calmly. I'm here to remind everyone watching, including you, that power means nothing. If it isn't grounded in honesty. The crowd went quiet again. The sound of a single camera shutter echoed through the hall. We can have different beliefs, Obama continued. We can even argue about them. That's democracy. But when we question each other's humanity, when we make people doubt what's already proven, we stop being leaders and start being performers. He paused again, then added softly, and the world doesn't need more performers. It needs adults in the room. That one line hit like a wave. People clapped slowly at first, then louder. The sound grew and filled the space. Ivanka smiled politely, nodding as if to keep her composure, but the message was clear. Obama had turned her challenge into a master class on composure, truth, and leadership. Still, he wasn't done. Obama's expression shifted, thoughtful, serious. He spoke now with a tone that felt almost personal. I've met your father many times, he said. We've disagreed on just about everything. But I've also seen that behind the bravado, behind the sound bites, there's someone who understands the game better than most. The difference is I chose not to let the game define me. He turned back toward Ivanka, his eyes steady but kind. You're smart, you're strong, and you have a voice. But the real question is, what will you use it for? To echo old noise or to create new understanding? The audience sat frozen. Wasn't anger. It wasn't dominance. It was guidance. Sharp but fair. Ivanka blinked slowly, her lips parting slightly, but no words came. Obama leaned back once more, calm as ever. I'm not here to win, he said finally. I'm here to remind everyone that leadership isn't about being right all the time. It's about being real. The applause this time was thunderous. People stood, not cheering like fans, but applauding like witnesses to something powerful. Even the moderator, caught in the emotions, smiled widely. Mr. President, he said with a laugh, I think you might have just summarized what leadership really means tonight. Obama chuckled softly, nodding. Maybe, he said. Or maybe we just remembered what it used to mean. As the crowd continued to clap, Ivanka smiled faintly. But this time it was different. Not the polished press-perfect smile from earlier. This one was smaller, almost reflective. She turned her gaze downward, tapping her notes lightly, as if searching for something to say that could measure up. But nothing came. Obama had taken a moment of confrontation and turned it into a lesson, one that didn't need shouting or anger, just truth. And in that hall with thousands watching, even those who didn't agree with him couldn't deny one thing. He had just given a masterclass in grace under pressure. The stage lights dimmed slightly as the moderator moved the discussion forward. But everyone knew the conversation had changed forever. Obama had done what great leaders do. He reminded people not of his power but of their own responsibility to think, to question, and to seek truth with calm strength. And that message, that tone hung in the air long after the applause faded. The stage lights felt softer now. The intensity that had filled the room minutes earlier had melted into a quiet, thoughtful calm. The moderator shuffled his papers nervously, pretending to move the discussion forward. But everyone in that hall knew the night had already found its climax. Obama had turned a public confrontation into something deeper, something unforgettable. And now all eyes were still on him, waiting to see what he would say next. Ivanka sat quietly, her usual polished confidence replaced by an almost pensive stillness. Her gaze drifted between the crowd, her notes, and Obama, as if she were still processing everything that had just unfolded. Then, without cue or question, Obama spoke again. His tone was gentle now, not the sharp precision of a debater, but the calm clarity of a teacher giving his final lesson. You know, he began softly, when I first walked on this stage tonight, I thought we'd spend the evening trading ideas about the future. Education, economy, the things that keep people up at night. He looked around, letting his eyes sweep across the audience. But somehow we ended up right back in the past, questioning facts that were settled years ago, talking about what divides us instead of what might unite us. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Some nodded, others sat still, locked in attention. And that's the real problem with politics today, he continued. We've built a system where we treat every disagreement like a battlefield, where truth isn't something to be respected, but something to be fought over. He paused and looked toward Ivanka. I don't blame you, he said gently. You were raised in the middle of that world. You learn from a man who's mastered the art of attention. But attention isn't the same as respect. Ivanka's eyes flickered slightly, but she stayed quiet. Obama continued, his tone steady, almost soothing. Your father has said many things about you that made people uncomfortable. Some called them jokes, others called them strange, but whatever they weren't respect. And when leaders blur that line between family, power, and principle, the people start losing faith in all of it. The room fell silent again. No one dared move. And that's why I'm saying this, he added. Not to insult, but to remind the country deserves better than personal jabs and ego wars. It deserves clarity, deserves humility. It deserves truth. A few people clapped quietly at first, unsure if it was appropriate. But the sincerity in his voice spread, and soon the applause grew louder. Obama smiled faintly, but didn't bask in it. He raised a hand slightly asking for calm. We've all said and done things that make us rethink who we are. But that's the beauty of democracy. It gives us the chance to grow, to admit mistakes, to listen again. He turned toward the crowd, speaking directly to them now, his voice lowering into that warm, reflective tone that people remembered from his presidency. I know times are tense, he said. I know trust is hard to find, but every time we let lies become louder than truth, we give up a little more of what makes us strong. He looked out across the sea of faces, some inspired, some emotional, some simply stunned. The truth isn't supposed to make you comfortable, he said. It's supposed to make you think. It's supposed to make you honest, especially when it's hard. Then came a pause, the kind that commands attention without asking for it. So, if there's one thing I want everyone watching here or at home to remember, he said, it's this. The measure of a leader isn't how loud they can speak, it's how much truth they can stand. That line hit deep. The applause this time wasn't loud. It was lasting. People stood slowly, clapping with quiet respect. Ivanka looked down, then up again. She wasn't angry anymore, just thoughtful. Whatever her intentions had been walking into that event, this ending wasn't what she expected. Obama smiled at her gently. Not gloating, not smug, just human. Ivanka, he said, you have influence. You have people who listen when you speak. Use that power carefully. 'Cause every word we say builds something, a bridge or a wall. Choice is ours. She nodded once. No words, just a faint acknowledgement that the message had landed. Obama then turned back to the audience one final time. I'll leave you with this, he said quietly. In politics and in life, truth doesn't need to be defended. It just needs to be lived. That's the only legacy worth leaving behind. The crowd erupted again. This time, not in frenzy, but in admiration. It wasn't about sides anymore. It was about the feeling that for a few minutes the room had touched something real. Obama stood, adjusted his suit jacket, and gave a small nod to the moderator. He shook Ivanka's hand politely. She smiled, still composed, but softer now, her expression less guarded, almost grateful. As Obama stepped off the stage, the lights caught the edge of his profile, calm, thoughtful, unbothered. The cameras followed him until he disappeared behind the curtain. And for a moment, the world outside that room didn't matter. People just sat there in silence, replaying what they had witnessed. One man's calm had dismantled an entire storm. One simple question, who is Barron's mom? It flipped the script, but it wasn't the question that defined the night. It was the way he ended it. He didn't humiliate. He didn't shout. He taught. And as the event came to a close, the audience left with a new understanding, not just of Obama or Ivanka, but of what leadership should really look like. It wasn't about the clever comeback or the viral moment. It was about truth. Steady, grounded, patient truth. The kind that doesn't need to fight for attention. The kind that stands on its own. And as the lights dimmed and the echoes of applause faded into the night, one thing was clear. Obama hadn't just won the room. He had reminded everyone watching what integrity really sounds